I shouldn't have stayed after the others left, but something in me refused to walk out that door. It was late, the kind of silence that makes every clock tick louder. The hallway outside the office was already dark, just the glow from her desk lamp spilling across the floor. I lingered in the doorway, half in shadow, trying not to look like a kid caught where he shouldn't be. She noticed me anyway. Of course she did. She always did. Still here? Her voice carried that clipped authority she was known for, but softer now, almost tired. She leaned back in her chair, arms folded, the light catching strands of her dark hair. She looked older than me by, 20 years? Maybe more. That thought made my stomach knot, and I hated myself for noticing the line of her jaw, the way her blouse sat against her shoulders. I shrugged, searching for words that wouldn't sound stupid. I didn't feel like going yet. Her brow arched. She didn't press, just watched me, waiting. That was worse than being questioned. The room smelled faintly of paper and her perfume, something subtle, warm, like sandalwood. It made it harder to think straight. I shifted on my feet, shoved my hands into my pockets. She tilted her head, and in that small gesture I swear she saw more than I wanted her to. "You're quiet tonight," she said. I almost laughed. Quiet? My head was a storm. But instead I muttered, "Just one of those days." She leaned forward, elbows on the desk. The lamplight painted her face in half shadow, half gold. "One of those days," she repeated, like she was testing the words on her tongue. "Sit." It wasn't a suggestion. I crossed the room, lowered myself into the chair opposite her. My knees brushed the edge of her desk. Too close. Not close enough. Neither of us spoke right away. She shuffled a paper, set it aside, then lifted her eyes back to me. Something flickered there, hesitation maybe, or recognition. "You know," she said finally, "you remind me of someone." "Someone good?" I tried to make it sound casual, but my voice cracked on the last word. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, not quite denial. "Someone who used to look at me like you do now." I froze. Heat rushed to my ears. My gaze darted down, to the polished wood between us, to the faint reflection of her hand resting near mine. "That's not—" I started, then stopped. Her hand shifted, fingers tapping lightly, rhythm out of sync with the ticking clock. The silence stretched. I forced myself to look up, and she didn't look away. There it was. A moment that should have passed, but didn't. She cleared her throat, sat straighter. "You shouldn't linger in here after hours." "Then why didn't you tell me to leave?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her eyes narrowed, but there was no anger in them. Only something sharp, unreadable. She exhaled slowly, then pushed her chair back an inch. "You're not leaving my office tonight," she said. The words landed heavier than they should have, echoing in the dim room. She didn't explain. She didn't have to. My pulse kicked in my throat, and I didn't know if I was trapped, or if I'd just been given exactly what I wanted. I should have laughed it off, called her bluff, stood up and left. But I didn't. Her words sat between us like a locked door. I could feel the weight of them, the strangeness. She was the principal, my principal. She wasn't supposed to be anything more than a distant authority figure in neat blouses and measured tones. And yet here I was, sitting in her office long after the halls had emptied, with the sound of rain starting against the windows and her eyes refusing to let mine go. "You're not leaving," I repeated softly, not a question, not quite belief. She leaned back in her chair, shoulders tight, hands folded. For a second, I thought she might smile, but instead her expression shifted into something else, something worn, tired. "I just don't want to sit here alone tonight. That's all." There it was. Vulnerability. I swallowed, unsure what to do with it. A part of me wanted to protect her, shield her from whatever storm she wasn't naming. Another part of me knew this was dangerous. A younger man staying alone in his principal's office, while the world outside thought the day had ended. What was I doing? Still, I didn't move. Her desk lamp flickered once, and in the brief shadow I caught her rubbing her temple, like she was fighting back a headache. A thin gold band glinted on her desk, not on her hand. I didn't even mean to notice it, but once I did, I couldn't stop staring. A wedding ring. Removed. My chest tightened. Rough night? I asked, voice lower than I meant. She hesitated. Rough year. Then, quieter. 17 years gone. Just like that. She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't have to. The ring told the rest. I should have said something polite. I should have looked away. Instead, I found myself studying the curve of her wrist as her hand shifted back toward the band, fingers brushing it like a habit she couldn't break. It doesn't suit you, I said before I could stop myself. Her head tilted, eyes locking on mine. What doesn't? The emptiness, I muttered, heat rising in my face. The silence that followed was unbearable. My heart hammered, and I wanted to take the words back, to pretend I hadn't said them. But then she did something unexpected. She reached across the desk, her fingers brushing my sleeve, just enough for the fabric to shift under her touch. A jolt ran through me, sharper than it should have been. You notice too much, she said. Her tone wasn't harsh, but it was warning and wonder all at once. I forced a shaky laugh, leaning back, though my arm still tingled where she'd touched it. Maybe I don't know when to stop. Her lips parted, like she was about to answer, then closed again. She stood, slow and deliberate, and walked around the desk. Each step echoed in the small office, closer, until she leaned against the edge of the desk beside me. Then don't stop, she said quietly. Stay a little longer. And just like that, leaving wasn't even an option anymore. The hum of the desk lamp filled the silence, louder than it should have. She was close now, close enough that I could see the faint trace of tiredness under her eyes, the small scar near her temple I'd never noticed before. Details that had no business lodging themselves into my chest the way they did. I shifted in my seat, gripping the armrest like it could keep me steady. You don't have to. I started, but the words tangled. Her hand rested lightly on the desk beside me, fingers brushing against mine, not holding, not claiming, just there. A touch small enough to deny if she wanted to, but deliberate enough to make my throat dry. Don't? She asked, her voice steady but soft. I swallowed hard. Don't make this harder than it already is. That should have been the end. A warning. But my body betrayed me. I didn't move my hand away. In fact, I let my fingers shift, just slightly, until the edge of my skin grazed hers. She didn't pull back. Something flickered in her eyes then, a crack in the polished exterior she wore every day. Not authority, not distance. Just a woman. And for the first time, I felt how unbearably human she was, sitting here with me in this too quiet room. Her breath caught, and she whispered, You remind me what it feels like to be noticed. The confession hung there, dangerous, tender, alive. I wanted to answer, to tell her how she had become the one thing I couldn't stop noticing, how I thought about her more than I should, how this whole thing scared me as much as it pulled me in. My mouth opened, and then the phone on her desk rang. We both jerked, the sound sharp as glass shattering. She pulled her hand back quickly, almost guiltily, as if the phone itself had caught us. I sat frozen, pulse racing, while she answered. Her voice slid into professionalism, smooth and controlled. Yes, no, I'm still in the office. Everything's fine. Her eyes flicked to me as she spoke, and though her words were calm, her grip on the receiver was too tight. She ended the call quickly, setting it back into its cradle with more force than necessary. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. The air was heavy, as though the phone had reminded us of what this was: wrong, complicated, off-limits. I pushed back slightly in my chair, putting space where there hadn't been any. We should. My voice cracked. I tried again. We should stop. But the truth was, I didn't want to. Every fiber of me screamed the opposite. She studied me quietly, then leaned closer again, so close I could see the way the lamplight caught on her lips. Then why? She whispered. Are you still here? I had no answer. Only silence, only the sharp ache of knowing we were standing on a line, and that one more step could change everything. The rain had grown heavier outside, tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. Inside, it was still, too still, except for the shallow rhythm of our breathing. She hadn't moved back after her question. Then why are you still here? It hovered in the air, wrapping tight around me, demanding an answer. I gripped the arm of the chair harder, my knuckles pale. Because I can't leave, I admitted. The words fell out before I could stop them, stripped of excuses, stripped of defense. Her eyes widened slightly, not surprise exactly, but something deeper. Like she'd been waiting for me to admit it. You know how impossible this is, she whispered. I nodded. Every second. Her hand twitched at her side, like she wanted to reach for me but didn't dare. My chest tightened. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying to ground myself, but instead I found myself looking up at her, so close, so unguarded in this light. You think I don't notice? I said, my voice low, uneven. The way you pause when I walk into a room. The way you look away before I can catch your eyes. The way you leave your ring on the desk instead of your hand. She inhaled sharply, her lips parting. The truth between us wasn't subtle anymore. It was raw, standing naked in the middle of the office. For a moment she said nothing. Then, almost painfully, you shouldn't see me like this. I don't know how not to, I replied. Her gaze locked on mine. Silence pressed in, thicker than the rain outside. The distance between us shrank, not physically, but in everything unspoken. Then she broke it. Do you have any idea what it would cost me? I did. I'd thought about it 100 times, lying awake at night, imagining lines I'd never dare cross. She had a career, a reputation, a life built over decades. And me? I was just me. Too young. Too reckless. Too willing to stay in this office long past the point of no return. I know, I whispered. And I don't care. The confession hung between us, reckless, irreversible. She exhaled, slow, trembling. Then, finally, she stepped forward and rested her hand on the back of my chair, her fingers brushing the nape of my neck. A small touch, but enough to send fire down my spine. I tilted my head up, eyes searching hers. She didn't move, didn't close the gap, but her stare was locked on mine, filled with something I couldn't name, longing, regret, hunger, all bleeding into one. Neither of us moved. Neither of us dared. The only sound was the rain, harder now, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then she whispered, so quietly it felt like a secret meant only for me. Tell me what you want. The room went silent, waiting. Her words rattled inside me. Tell me what you want. The answer burned at the back of my throat, but before I could shape it, the office door rattled. A soft knock, followed by a voice muffled through the wood. Principal? You still here? We froze. Her hand slipped from the back of my chair, her eyes snapping wide with panic. For the first time tonight, she looked less like the unshakable figure I'd known and more like someone cornered. Yes, she called out, her voice shifting, formal again. I'm just finishing paperwork. The hallway creaked with footsteps. Then silence. Whoever it was moved on, and we were alone again, though the air felt different now, heavier, riskier. I let out the breath I'd been holding. That was close. She pressed her fingers to her forehead. This is insane, she muttered, almost to herself. I shouldn't have. Her words broke off. She sat down hard on the edge of the desk, staring at the wedding band still lying there. Then she picked it up, rolling it between her fingers, before looking at me with something raw in her eyes. You know the truth? She asked. I shook my head. Her laugh was dry, humorless. I'm not divorced. Not really. He left last year, but he never signed the papers. I've been walking around with this limbo. Not married. Not free. Just stuck. The admission hit harder than I expected. All the stolen glances, the pauses, the loneliness in her voice, it all made sense. I shifted forward, my knees nearly touching hers. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," she said, her voice breaking for the first time tonight, "I don't want you to think I'm something I'm not. I don't want you to look at me like I'm available when I'm not sure I am." Her honesty should have made me pull back. It should have reminded me how impossible this was. Instead, I felt something else, protective, almost desperate. "You think that changes how I see you?" I asked. Her eyes lifted, searching mine. "Doesn't it?" I shook my head. "No. It makes me see you clearer." Her lips parted, but no words came. Her hand trembled slightly as she set the ring back down on the desk with a soft click. I wanted to reach out, to steady her hand, to erase the years of regret that sat on her shoulders. Instead, I sat frozen, watching the war in her eyes. "This can't go on," she whispered. But her body betrayed her, she didn't move away. She stayed right there, close enough that her knee brushed against mine. I leaned forward, voice barely a breath. "Then why are you still here?" Her silence said more than words ever could. The air between us quivered, charged with everything unsaid. For the first time, I wasn't sure if we were about to fall apart, or fall straight into each other. The rain had slowed, but inside the office it felt like a storm was still raging, trapped between the walls and the silence. She hadn't moved. Neither had I. Her knee still brushed mine, the space between us too thin to be accidental. The ring on the desk gleamed under the lamp like a reminder neither of us wanted to see. "This isn't fair to you," she said finally. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "You're young and I'm—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "I should tell you to go." I leaned forward, my words rough with the truth I'd been holding back. "Then tell me. Tell me to go, and I will." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She looked at me, really looked, and for a second I saw everything: loneliness, exhaustion, the sharp ache of someone who's spent too long pretending to be fine. I pressed on. "You asked me what I wanted. I want this. I want you. Even if it's complicated. Even if it scares me half to death." The confession burned on my tongue, terrifying and liberating at once. Her breath hitched. "You don't know what you're saying." I shook my head. "I do. I've been saying it without words for weeks. Every time I stayed late. Every time I looked at you too long. I can't pretend anymore." Her hands gripped the edge of the desk, white-knuckled. For a heartbeat, I thought she would shut it down, close herself off again. Instead, she let out a laugh that cracked into something closer to a sob. "You think you're the only one pretending?" she whispered. The words hit me harder than anything else tonight. My chest tightened, my throat dry. "Then stop," I said. Her eyes shone in the lamplight, not polished, not guarded, just raw, exposed. She reached out, hesitated, then finally let her hand rest against my cheek. Warm, trembling, real. "You'll regret this," she whispered. I closed my eyes, leaning into her touch. "I'll regret walking away more." The room went impossibly quiet. No ticking clock, no rain, just the sound of our breathing, heavy and uneven, like the air itself knew something had shifted. When I opened my eyes again, she was still there, hand on my face, staring at me like she was memorizing every line. "This can't last," she murmured. "Then let's not waste it," I answered. Her shoulders sagged, the fight draining from her. And for the first time, she didn't pull back. She let herself stay, just a woman, just a man, just two people caught in something bigger than rules or years. We didn't kiss, not yet. We didn't have to. The silence between us was enough, heavy with promises we hadn't spoken but both already knew. And for the first time tonight, I realized, staying in her office wasn't about being trapped. It was about choosing not to leave. The rain finally stopped by the time we spoke again. The quiet that followed felt different, lighter though no less fragile. She still had her hand on my cheek. I still hadn't moved. Hours could have passed like that, and I wouldn't have known. "I don't know how this ends," she admitted. Her voice trembled, stripped of authority, stripped of every title she carried. Just her. I've built my whole life around rules, around being in control. And tonight, I'm breaking all of them. I took her hand not to hold it, just to steady it. Maybe that's the point. Maybe tonight isn't about endings. It's about choosing. Her gaze softened. The weight on her shoulders didn't disappear, but it shifted. For the first time, she wasn't carrying it alone. I thought I was too old to feel this again, she said quietly. Too far gone. Too set in my mistakes. I shook my head. You're not. You're here. And so am I. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't neat. But it was real. She sat back slowly, letting her hand fall, though her eyes didn't leave mine. You know this isn't just about us. People will talk. They'll judge. Maybe they'll be right. Maybe, I admitted. But when I look at you, I don't care what they say. I care that you see me. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. And what do you see? I didn't hesitate. Someone worth staying for. The silence that followed was different from all the others tonight, not heavy, not dangerous. Just full. For the first time, she let herself lean into me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. It wasn't a kiss, it wasn't a grand gesture, but it was everything. And in that stillness, I realized something. I hadn't been trapped in her office. I hadn't been waiting for permission or forgiveness. I'd been waiting for this, for her to let me close enough to see the cracks, and for me to care about them anyway. When she finally lifted her head, the lines on her face seemed softer, her eyes clearer. Whatever happens after tonight, she said, we can't pretend this didn't matter. I nodded. No. We can't. We stood together in the quiet office, the ring still on the desk between us. Not a symbol of what she'd lost anymore, but of what she was finally ready to lay down. I didn't know where we'd go from here. Tomorrow could bring distance, questions, maybe regret. But tonight had given us something no one could take back, the truth. And sometimes, the truth is enough to change everything. Sparkles, did you enjoy the story? Would you like more forbidden slow-burn romances like this? Or maybe emotional stories of regret, longing, or second chances? Tell me what kind of story you want to hear next. I'd love to bring it to life for you.